Hi everyone, it's been a long time since I've done one of these videos that I simply just talk to the public, but seeing that I had a few questions sent to me either via comments on Facebook or on YouTube regarding the Bas Rutten podcast, and I think some people saw it as a way to diminish or discredit the Wing Chun system, and really it had nothing to do with that at all. Absolutely nothing. It's a context of combat reality that I perceive and many other people perceive on a different scale of things, in the sense that when you're training for self-defense in its totality, at least in our school of thinking, we like to try and understand the reality of energy, the force of impact that derives from so many combat systems. And there are a lot of combat systems out there that, whether they come from sports combat or not, when you're at close range, you're going to be in a danger zone, and that danger zone needs to be protected. So fundamentally, you got to ask yourself, how good is your Wing Chun under that context of reality? So and the usual discussions that comes out is always, yeah, but these guys don't know about the street, these guys don't know about how hard it is to do this and do that. And my argument is this: I think it's a lot of crap, or failure to take responsibility for yourself to broaden your horizons. Because what happens in the combat world, unfortunately, Wing Chun is not seen, not only Wing Chun, other internal systems of combat. I won't name them because it's not necessary, but let's talk about Wing Chun. It's not always positively seen. It's done a lot of progress over the years. If you look at MMA and you look at some of the fighters like Tony Ferguson, Anderson Silva, and a couple of others I could probably bring up, that uses bits and pieces. Of course, Sean O'Barzi was one of the first pioneers who actually tried to do something positive with Wing Chun, and I think with what he did, as much as some people may disagree, I think it made a very positive impact in the combat world. So Wing Chun is what it is. It's when I talked to Bas, I clearly said that for me, in the security context, with riots, if you fight more than one person, it's never a one-on-one situation. Wing Chun's always worked well for me, and that's a fact, or else I wouldn't have said it. However, if we got to go into sparring, go into the ring, the context or the reality of combat in that context changes. And even if one asks, how does the context change? I mean, it's pretty easy to understand. In a fight situation where there's like a shock aggression, or there's a build-up to a fight which could include more than one person, or the circumstances of going up against someone you don't know. He could be bigger, stronger than you, he could have friends, or etc., etc. It's so unpredictable that you can't really gauge it. So therefore, the training for that type of reality of combat is simply different. But what remains the same? We still have kicks and punches, we have elbow strikes or whatever. Let's include the fact that it's weapons. It could be guns, it could be knives, it could be sticks. People use anything for weapons these days: chairs, bloody cell phones, you name it. So the list goes on of what the unpredictability of what that sort of combat could be. If myself and some of my friends who did a lot of security, some people that I know on the internet, they could tell you stories where, the unpredictability of what could happen is really the thing that we're training for. And so a lot of times, we train the guys in my school for chaotic situations, stuff that they can't plan or foresee. This is different, obviously, when you're doing a cage fight or you're doing a boxing fight, etc. At least with the boxer, I know how many fights he's got under his belt. I know his weight. I know how much experience he's got. At least in the ring, we're in a safe environment, so to speak. I'm not saying you're not going to get hurt or whatever, but at least you have a referee. At least you got medics on the side. Even in our tournaments, we have ambulances, in case things go for the worst. So in some ways, you're more protected, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. That's the way it should be, because it's a different type of fighting. But you can't deny that type of fighting there doesn't give you a high skill set of reactivity. It's how you use that reactivity when you're doing your personal training, and that's where I'm trying to connect the two worlds. So you got to say to yourself, well, how am I going to train for combat? Do I need to put protective gloves? Do I need to put headgear on? Or do you guys want to always go back to the old sayings of saying, yeah, but if I built you in the eyes, or I kick you in the balls, then I go for the center line or the soft spots. I've had these conversations millions of times. And let's not forget one very important thing, that, as much as we want to differentiate ourselves, don't forget that these fighters here, UFC, MMA, whatever, sure, they don't go for the soft spot or the center line and stuff like that. But why is that? Obviously because it's a combat sport. But secondly, what, you think that these guys here would have any problems like changing their mindset, and if they have to go for the cool or go for the soft spots, they wouldn't do it? Of course they would, but they train their skill sets to have control. And obviously, we're not like wild animals. If we want to, we can implement that same sort of control. So, if you want to talk about center line and stuff like that, sure, you can train it and restrict some of the moves. And when it's necessary, that if you really need to use those moves, maybe you need to be, because the situation is a bit desperate, well then you use it. So it's a matter of just training and understanding and becoming more conscious of yourself under pressure. And it's true, we do tend to go for the center, but the thing is that I'm trying to get across, which is really important, is how much control and how much of a skill set you have to control yourself in a fight situation as well. Because it's not like, I even see some things that are taught, maybe even by Bas Rutten, that I don't agree with. And you say, hey, the best solution at a close range is to headbutt somebody. And I'd say, sure, yeah, okay, if you got a strong head and, you catch the other guy by surprise. But when I talk about control, legally, now I don't know what it's like in your country, but in our country and in other countries, you pay legal consequences for headbutting or seeing somebody in the eyes or kicking them in the balls and stuff like that, because you risk doing permanent damage. Therefore, what do we use to learn control? We have our programs, and in particular, what I like to teach, biomechanics of Chisao. Now, biomechanics of Chisao is not a straightforward thing. It's such I always stress the word global or multi-dimensional process of learning that, you're going to learn forever if you're good at understanding the principles of Chisao or Wing Chun. So that's how I view combat, that's how I teach my guys. That's really the sense of the conversation. If you listen well to the podcast, the very first questions that I asked Bas, is relating the stress on the street, for example, security, and comparing it to the ring. Because the two, sooner or later, have to meet halfway, in the sense, I'm not saying that you have to be, in all cases, a champion kickboxer, or a champion Thai boxer, or a champion MMA fighter. But ask yourself, how do you train? Because these guys train under stress. These guys compete against other athletes who maybe have had 40 or 50 fights under their belt. You know what I'm saying? So they have a very broad experience They have a high level of pain tolerance. They have a high skill of reflexes. So you can utilize a lot of this type of training from sports combat and implement it into your Wing Chun, because there's a lot of skill sets that you need to work out, and you need to work it under a certain realistic pressure, not just like what we see most of the time, right? We see a lot of demos, and yeah, I'm famous because I like to make fun of some people, but all in all, when you're applying your Wing Chun, last thing you want to do against one punch is Pak Sao, Tan Sao, Hun Sao, and then counterattack. I mean, no one's going to stand there to let you do three things at once. So, it's a way of trying to. My debate was really a way to try and get Wing Chun more reality-based with their training. No way do I discredit the art that I grew up with. In any case, it's helped me, if anything, respect a lot of the martial arts and their sources of power, where they get most of their power and how they drive it in through their techniques. And of course, what peril it means to a practitioner of Wing Chun at close range. Because remember, at close range, anybody can knock you out. It's not just a Wing Chun man. So, you need to train your distances properly. You need to have a certain level of realism behind your hits. It can be controlled. You can wear headgear or you can wear gloves and work certain principles of Wing Chun. It may limit you with your grabbing, your grappling, your stand-up wrestling, your chi sao reflexes, but you need to work under a certain level of realistic stress, or else we risk, and we have been, a laughing stock to many of these other combat systems. We don't like to admit it, but it's a fact. So that's a bit of my mission statement in general. That's the sort of thing that I want to try and eliminate as time goes on. And if you look around on the internet, you look at the various schools, it's pretty quick to understand who do their best to try and make it reality-based. They cross-train with other systems in order to broaden their perspective with Wing Chun. Okay, that's why I teach Wing Chun Dao, which is a global perspective of combat and using Chi Sao on a broad spectrum. Okay, so that's really what the conversation with Bas was about.